Hi there folks, Simon here. This is Tac University, a series that covers some tips and tricks and maybe just some things that I've learned along the way that I think may help bring your game to a higher level. Today we're going to talk about flat count differential, or FCD. Specifically, we're going to talk about positive flat count differential moves and what that exactly means. A positive flat count differential move is one that gives you more than one flat on the board. So, for example, placing one flat would give you +1 to your flat score. But if we want to talk about a real positive flat count differential move, we want to talk about ones that give you more than one flat to your flat score. Positive flat count differential moves come into play when you have two good players that are about even in terms of skill level, because that's when you'll have a game go to flats. Typically, at lower levels of play, you'll see people miss road threats, miss Tinue patterns a lot more frequently, especially if their skill levels vary greatly between one player and the next. But in these higher levels, when you're playing in these games, you want to be able to keep track of your flat score and keep track of these potential moves that you will have and your opponent will have for the rest of the game. Since if this game is inevitably going to flats or likely going to flats, you want to be able to make sure that you come out on top. So in this game, let's take a look at black here making a threat. So spreading the stack down and capturing onto B3 is a road, and so white has to respond to that, and they respond by moving this wall over. Now, this does a couple things. If we look at this, we see, okay, they're self-capturing here. So white goes from 11 flats to 13 to 10 flats to 13, so that's a negative flat count differential move. Not super great, but they didn't have a lot of options there if they wanted to maintain this hard capstone in this position. Okay, that's fine. Let's see, black's response is just moving this down. Doesn't change the flat count at all, but it does set up to potentially take this stack, which would change the flat count. By capturing that and creating a road threat at the same time, that would change the flat count pretty significantly and change what white could do with this stack in the future. So white is going to move those. And so if we look at this right here, we see this is one white flat in terms of flat count score. That is one white flat. And so white takes this stack and spreads it out up top, covering a blank spot and then a black piece, and freeing a white flat at the same time. So if we take a look at this, it is 10 to 13, a 3 flat count difference in between these two flat count scores. After this move, it's now 11 to 12, just a 1 flat count difference. So that is a +2 move. So a +2 flat count differential move. Black now has to respond in some way to kind of get some ground back, and they're just going to play right up here. And that is, again, just a +1, as standard placing a flat is just +1. Now, in response, white's going to play down here, trying to go for this threat in this direction, but also placing flats, staying in the game, only 1 indifference between them. And they have this move of taking this wall stack and dropping 1 down here, and then leaving the wall here, or potentially just freeing it up there. And that's a +2 move, just leaving it down here, +3 by dropping and then covering. And so they've got those in the back pocket to kind of change how this flat count score works. And so black responds again right here, kind of blocking this, but also setting things up for later. White now moves this down. Now, this is important here because white moves this down, and that is a +2 move. And we can see that the flat count score is now, it goes from 12 to 14 to 13 to 13. +2 move. And now white also has a road threat, throwing this stack, dropping 1 flat here and 1 capstone here. That would do it. That would be a road. So black has to respond to that in some way. Responds by bringing that wall over to capture. But white plays a flat here. At this point, black can take the top 2 pieces of this stack, dropping 1 white flat here and then smashing this, and that would be a Tinue threat. But very difficult to see in this moment, and black did not do that because, again, very difficult to see, and you're not always going to see every Tinue threat, and people only saw it after the game, after they looked into it and analyzed it further. So doesn't do that. Instead, plays another flat. So white places a flat here, black places another flat. So they're really competing here on flat score, and black is ahead by 1 flat count. And white doesn't have too many moves here in terms of positive flat count differential moves. Has a couple. Really, the main one is this, just taking this capstone stack and throwing it over. That would be a +2 move. But that's the only one they've really got, besides this one coming up here, making that +3 move going up top. And so you can kind of expect that this +3 move is going to come eventually once it starts to come down to flats. As we see, black only has 3 reserves left. So black controls when this game ends. So if we see the next move, white makes a capture. So that capture is technically a +1 move, because it does even the scores up in terms of flats, and it does make a threat here. But black instead is going to move this stack down, cut off that threat at the same time. Now, white has to respond in some way that still keeps this alive, decides to place a flat here at e5. Again, black is ahead by 1 flat, but white does have that move here, that +3 move, to bring them into the lead in terms of flats. And they're both keeping track of this very closely, trying to make sure that they come out on top when this game does end. And black is trying to finish this game pretty quickly. And so black decides to place a flat here. Black is ahead by 2 flats, so white cannot place a flat here because that would lead to a board fill win condition and automatically grant the win to black because it would be 15-14. So white has to respond in some way to get that flat advantage back. Decides to toss these up here, make that flat advantage move. Now there's 14-13. White is now in the lead in terms of flats. The move that you would expect to be made here would probably be taking the capstone and this top white flat, moving them over here onto c3, as that would be a +2 move and bring black back into the lead with 14-13, and would also threaten tack here by smashing onto this wall. But black doesn't do that, instead decides to place a flat here. Now, the reason a flat is placed here is because black was thinking, okay, I can sneakily use this capstone to smash this wall and make this road going all the way down, which that's a sneaky threat. It also is a horizontal threat at the same time. So very sneaky threat, not easy to see. However, he failed to remember that now that he has placed that flat, this board fill option is now available, and the score is now even, 14-14. White can place the final flat and win. White wins by flats by placing that final one. So they were keeping very close track of the flat count and making these positive flat count differential moves. One of the big ones we see here, this is the game changer, is this move right here. So it's 13-15. That's a 2 flat count differential between them. White is 2 down. Boom, makes this move. Now white is 1 up. So a +3 move. That's a +3 flat count differential move. Big for an end game in terms of flat count. And so that puts white in the lead, and white is sort of controlling how this game goes. Black needs to respond to that in order to be able to finish this game off with flats, and just misplays there right at the wrong moment and misses that. Keeping track of your flats throughout the whole game is something that the very top players do, like No Hat Coder, like Fwib. They always keep track of their flats, and they keep track of potential capture situations that they might be able to force that would give them an advantage in flat count. So while you're trying to get better, while you're trying to look at these games, maybe you're watching some commentaries and you hear me say something like, oh, that's a +3 move, or that's a +3 flat count differential move, something like that. You can know what I'm talking about now, And you can see how it really does matter, and it really does affect these games, especially at a higher level of play when you've got these two players that are evenly matched and that game is going to go to flats. When you're a beginner, the games aren't going to go to flats too often. People are going to miss roads. I miss roads all the time, so it would make sense that a beginner would miss roads too. And you're going to miss tinue sequences and that sort of thing. But once you start to get a little bit better and you run into these flat wins, that's when taking note of these positive flat count differential moves and how you can get them, how you can maneuver them into your advantage, that's when you'll see a huge difference in your gameplay. Also, you'll notice that while they were going for flats the whole time, they didn't stop making tack threats. You can't just keep playing for flat count the whole time and ignore tack threats at the same time, because the tack threats help force your opponent to make certain moves, while you can then respond by making these positive flat count moves. Not always possible, but that is the case sometimes. That is all for today. Thanks for watching. Be sure to tune in to the next video in this TAC University series, and as always, be sure to check out the description of this video for all the TAC resources like the TAC subreddit, and especially the TAC Discord server, which is the community hub where you will find all sorts of people to play with, discuss all things TAC, and even play asynchronous or correspondence games right there in the Discord server without using any additional programs. It's really fun, really easy, and a good way to get better at TAC without having a time limit or having to carve out a big block of time to play a whole game at once on playtac.com. Again, all the resources are there, playtac.com, the subreddit, which has TAC tinue puzzles every weekday, how to play videos, and all that jazz. Be sure to check out all those links, and until next time, have a great day and happy tacking.